wrong hand.
Right.
And that sort of leads me on to our brain. Just a few comments about it. We know our bodies, we talked about it many times, are fantastic temples, fantastic things. Every cell in our body is alive, and just thinking about what we can do, the complexity of our evolutionized bodies is amazing, and specifically the brain. And the reason perhaps I'm thinking about that, we talked about the toothbrush, trying to get your brain to function a bit differently. The reason I just briefly mentioned it is because yesterday one of my two brothers actually had a brain operation. Now, he knew this was coming for the last few months. He's got something in his hand called, I think it's called essential tremor. There may be some of our listeners or viewers have experienced that for themselves, or somebody they know has got that. And it's something actually I noticed quite a few years ago when we had some sort of social function or a family do or something. I noticed when I gave Mike, my brother Mike, a cup, for example, I passed him a cup of something, he would take it and his hand would be shaking just fairly slightly. But over the last few years, I have noticed that it's become more prominent. And I guess it's one of those things you don't like to sort of say, oh, well, why is your hand shaking, Mike? You know, you just think, well, it could just be a nervous thing, something like that. In fact, as it went on, I began to think, does he have something like Parkinson's? Because I think that can be a symptom of Parkinson's disease. But again, it was one of those things really none of us in the family ever mentioned, not because we don't care, but it just seemed a bit intrusive, so we didn't. But I guess it was about maybe a year ago, maybe a bit less. He actually talked to me one day and said, I'm sure you've noticed, Trev, he said that my hands shake, both of them to an extent. His main hand, his right hand, is worst. And I said, well, yeah, I had noticed it, but, doesn't seem to bother you. He said, well, it does, and it's getting worse. And he said, I've been under a consultant about it. And apparently, now this would have been about, I don't know, last June or July. He said, I've been offered an operation. And I said, what sort of operation? He said, well, it's a brain operation. And he said, I don't know the rights of it, he said, but if it's successful, then pretty soon that tremor in that hand will significantly improve or heal up altogether. He said,
Wow.
so I've decided I'm going to have it. I said, okay. I said, so what does it actually entail? And he said, well, it's going to be this was about September or whenever it was, next January the 12th. So it was this week. He said, and there's a very top brain surgeon at the hospital in London somewhere that he was having it done. And he'll be accompanied by another very top surgeon.
Mm.
So anyway, he didn't know, I don't think he knew too much about it, except that as with brain operations, you have to be conscious, which is a bit of an awe-inspiring thought, isn't it? To know that they're operating on your brain, but they need you conscious so that you can respond to the questions. If they touch a certain area, something will happen. Anyway, long story short, he spoke to me yesterday. He was allowed out home yesterday after the day before his operation. And the only reason I raise this is to say, the incredible people around us in all walks of life, really, and things that many of us would say, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't be a surgeon. I wouldn't want to be cutting into people's bodies. We all have things we couldn't really possibly do because they don't appeal to us. But of course, across populations, different people want to do different things. Appeal to us, but of course across populations different people want to do different things and maybe are called to do different things. Anyway, he told me this actually in an email, and I'm going to speak to him later about it. But I said, how did it go in my email? And he said, well, the four anti the 4 injections to actually numb his head before they drill into it, he said, were awful. Now, can you imagine 4 injections, quite strong needles going in to your head, where, of course, they've shaved the relevant parts as well? So he said they were just dreadful. He said, but then they bolt your head into a frame with 4 bolts. And he said, I can't describe how bad it was. And then, of course, I don't know much more about that. I don't know how long it all lasted, possibly up to an hour or so. And he was conscious the whole time. But he said it was unreal. He said, I kept thinking or feeling that I was doing reverse somersaults in a black space with my legs going over my head, and this kind of awful movement. So it obviously was traumatic. Anyway, he ended up by saying, the incredible thing is, he said, the tremor in my right hand has gone. He said, it's a miracle, because they had said it may just improve a bit. He said, but it's completely gone.
Wow.
He said, I can't believe it. But my purpose really in saying that is not to sort of frighten people who have to have brain operations. Obviously, it was a tolerable thing for him at the end of the day.
Hmm.
But yeah, it seems to be successful. He said he's a bit tricky walking at the moment and he gets a bit numb in the face, but these are things that were predicted, these symptoms. But my purpose is to say what incredible people. They've mapped the brain now completely, really, and they know what happens where. But the vital importance of when they put their scalpel or whatever else into the brain, it's got to be absolutely precisely laser perfect on that spot. So yeah, these people who walk among us are incredible people, and I
Wow.
guess again one of those aspects of life that we take a bit for granted. But yeah, and indeed he will have the other hand done, he hopes, but they can't do it for about a year because of the effect, the trauma on the brain, I suppose. But he's quite optimistic that it can be done as well. So yeah, they can do incredible things to our
Wow.
bodies, and I was totally, as we would be, impressed with that surgeon. Okay, so coming to you now, asking you a question: how many fingers do we have? Do you have, Cuz? How
I
many
used to have,
fingers?
I used to have